This conference will now be recorded.
Stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. This is the Mitchell County Board of Supervisors meeting. We're at the Mitchell County Courthouse in Osage. The meeting is available by GoToMeeting also. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any corrections? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Brian makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mayor seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approve the minutes of the June 13th, 2023 meeting. Any corrections needed to be made to the minutes?
Make a motion for the June 13th meeting.
Second.
Someone's made a motion. Arthur's seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call, Jim.
Aye.
Sydney. Aye. Mike.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Tyler.
Aye. County Attorney General discussion. I do not see him here with us today. Sheriff update. I do not see him here with us today. So we're zipping through that. Department head discussion.
I got one. Conservation update.
You
Conservation Board had a regular monthly meeting last month, or last week, and we also had one last month too, but we'll go with last week's update first. Wetland project is getting closer to being done. They've completed all the dirt work. We've got to do a survey of the property, make sure it meets the needs of what was recommended for cutting out the rest of the dirt, and then we need to go ahead and do the erosion control. So we got to put the silt fence back out and that, and then seeding of it, which our hope is, the time frame around is hopefully by next Friday, all this is done. And then we can go ahead and see where the taupe survey is. And then that project should be wrapped in at our next board meeting in July. Let's see, we got a new rental agreement up at the Hoffman House there up by Otrano. Our current renter's moving out. We'll have new renters move in. That way we continue to make money on it, but also at the same time allow us the ability to go ahead and see what we want to do with that property long-term after that type of thing. The Mitchell Dam, if people have been up to Interstate Park lately, we've been doing a lot of work on the dam. We have divers, they arrive tomorrow morning. We'll be rehooking the chains that broke over the winter. So we'll be reconnecting so the dam, the gates, the retainer gates on the dam are hooked up. We have bearings that have gone out on one of the generators, so we've taken that apart and we'll be putting new bearings on. But now that the fact that the bearings are out, it's the best time to go ahead and do some work on the actual chamber itself and the generator itself. So we're doing some upkeep on that. So we'll be up there most of the summer, a couple days a week, each week, kind of doing some stuff on the dam. There's quite a few needs that just need to be addressed up there that have kind of been neglected. So we're kind of working on that aspect of it to kind of get that thing back up and running. We did do a couple equipment purchases at the last board meeting with some money we had in our budget. We bought a new mower, and then we also are buying 2 new fuel tanks, as we're going to be moving the fuel tanks closer to the shop and then putting them under surveillance where they're at located right now. They're secured, but we'd like to get them a little bit more secured. Plus they're kind of outdated and we need to get them updated. June 29th, which is next Thursday. I think it's next Thursday. Sounds about right. We have our water trail designation, so we will be floating the river. We've got a 10 o'clock a.m. You're all invited to it. We'll go ahead and do kind of re-speak about what's happened with the water trail designation all the way through the county. And then the heads of the DNR, the director and the deputy director will be up and we'll be floating the river. We'll take off from Tuples or Bennett's Access up there on River Road, and we'll be floating down to T38. So that starts at 10 o'clock next week. This weekend, we will be set up at Valence. I think it's Valent, right?
Yep.
All right. They've got their big celebration this weekend, so we'll be there. Chelsea and our intern will be out in the prairie, kind of talking about prairie and that sort of stuff, and we'll be a part of that process. So we're excited to see that sort of stuff going on. We did get an insurance claim on the retaining wall over at the visitor center in Riceville at the Bike Trail Visitor Center. So that is moving forward. We're getting bids right now to get that taken care of. And then the big thing that's coming up is we do have a board member whose term ends at the end of this month. So our next board meeting is July 11th. We'll need to have an appointment for that position. The individual that is up is Bridget Chatfield. She is eligible to do another term and has put an application in to do another term. And then also it does have to be with the state code, it has to be gender equality. So we do have to appoint a female so that we stay within the rules of that. So I don't know when you guys want to put that on your agenda or have that discussion, but July 11th is our next board meeting, so we'd like to have that announcement. You gotta wait till after her term is up, which is the end of this month. keep in mind. Other questions?
I'm wondering, can we discuss it next week and have it so that it takes, can we do?
I think you gotta
No,
ask
can we
Aaron,
discuss
but
it?
from the public health discussion that was back in December, I think you can't appoint until after her term is up, and her term isn't up until the end of this month. So you can't appoint until July,
We have a
but
meeting
you
on
can have the
July 3rd.
discussion.
We have a meeting on July 3rd.
July 3rd?
Yeah.
Oh, and, yeah, or the 5th, I wanted to talk about that also, so,
Yeah.
but anyway, but we could meet that 11th.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep, that's all we ask. But like I said, she's up, I know she's put back in, but it's up for you guys to discuss. But again, it does have to stay a female, in order to go ahead and meet the gender equality law. So, other questions?
Maybe you don't know, but will the construction be done on that bridge before you float?
No, from my understanding, I believe it won't be, but we've already talked to them and it should not be an issue of anything coming over. They just put the signs up as a liability thing that, debris could fly off the bridge while you're floating, but people have been floating and we haven't heard any issues, but they just have to do that for liability, so shouldn't be a problem. And if you're interested in coming to the thing and you wanna float with us, we do got kayaks and canoes available. All you gotta do is just call us and reserve one. It's not a rental fee or anything like that. You just gotta call and let us know that you need a boat. We'll make sure you got a kayak and a canoe. That goes for you guys and the general public.
Yeah.
Anything else?
any questions for the director? I guess we're good.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Any other department head discussion, or anything?
I don't know if it has to do with department head, but I know there's been complaints on the quarry over there that folks have started. I'm sure that's why you're here, right?
That's what I heard.
Because the well inspection hasn't been done.
Do you have the, permit on
The permit on me? No, I do not.
you?
But, it was discussed that night that you were gonna do a well inspection, you were gonna plant trees and grass, and it hasn't been done, and you've been doing blasting, so they're concerned about their well.
Yeah, we've been, I guess I'm not sure if I need to be addressed right now or not.
What's
Pardon
that?
me? What's that?
Should I be addressed right now or should I be talking?
Well, I was gonna let some discussion, but I didn't want to get into it too much either, so I mean, if you can just answer the question, we can leave it at that, but if there's more to it, then maybe there has to be discussion during the week, we'll put it on the agenda, but feel free to.
Well, and I didn't realize the man was on maternity leave, so I bugged her on a text, but, I was trying to get the copy of the conditional use permit. I haven't got that yet.
Oh.
And talking to Macy, I believe is,
Mhm.
so the well, I want to ask her if, she'll test the well, how we want to do that.
I think it actually be an inspection, don't it? I mean, like, a test ain't gonna determine if your well caves in or not. An inspection would be like a camera going down, looking at it before you dynamite, and then if there's problems, you look again to see if it caved in. Ain't that a well inspection?
I think without the permit here, I don't think I need to say.
Okay,
What's
so
that?
let's,
I mean, it was discussed that night, and that's,
Well, I'll give you this too, then.
let's see if we can discuss some, yeah, that'd be fine.
This, I guess, is pertinent since the sheriff's been called.
Okay.
Not by the neighbors.
And this, Lindsay, just in a brief description, is for just,
Has permission to go across the road with the haul trucks.
okay, all right.
We've been told the sheriff's gonna be there to, issue tickets.
All right. Well, let's, see if we can get some of this resolved during the week between us and Falk, I guess. And then, you come up with some answers. And if it's something that needs to come on an agenda item for next week, then we'll follow through with that way, but. I
Yeah,
don't
we've been in constant communication with the neighbors. I don't think anybody here would plant grass right now. We're talking about what kind of trees to put up. There's no dates on that.
yeah, I didn't say they're mostly concerned about their well. Because you said you would do it, and it hasn't been done, so that's what they're.
Okay. We'll figure that out this week, and then we'll see if we have to have it on the agenda for next week, okay?
Yes, thanks.
We'll go that route. So, okay.
Laura.
Any other department head discussion? We're wondering about or I was wondering about July 5th for the next meeting rather than the 3rd.
Okay.
Is that something that the board would be accepting of? Do it on a Wednesday rather than the Monday before the 4th? Same time, just on a Wednesday instead. I'm wondering, is the board okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
I'm okay with that. Mark, you okay with that? Sure. Okay. Doesn't matter to me. So Rachel, you want to schedule for Wednesday then instead?
Yep.
Okay. And then, last thing I had was Heidi Kuehl from Northland Securities contacted me. She'd like to get a hold of us sometime and discuss our finances in regards to the bonds that we have out. And just from conversation with her, it's not going to be a regular board meeting because she wants to take about an hour and discuss different things. So probably mid to end of July is what we're targeting. Don't have to figure it out now, but maybe if it was on a Tuesday, we'd do a 1 o'clock meeting. If it was on a Wednesday, maybe we'd do an 11 o'clock meeting, just a couple ideas. Again, we don't have to figure that out today, but think about it and we'll come up with the time, so. So, middle to the end of July, what we're thinking of, so. That's all I had. Anything else from anybody online? Okay. County engineer update.
Morning.
Good morning.
One thing I forgot to bring up last week, the union guys are talking about taking July 3rd as their floating holiday. I assume that's not an issue with anybody. It's not an issue with me. So, that's okay. We'll just let them know that it's gonna go that way. But okay, you guys don't have an issue with that?
We're okay with that?
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Last week, right after the meeting, or during the meeting, I got an email. I sent you guys an email about this last week about the state line section of road up by Kirkwood, between Kirkwood and Minnesota. I can't remember what highway that is now. So just to let you guys know that they did do the cold in place last week. I mean, I have a letter. I think I emailed you guys the document that stated that at one time back in 1992, the county did take possession of that little stretch between Kirkwood and the Minnesota road to maintain. And we'd be foolish not to spend the money to get that little portion fixed. So I pulled the trigger and said, whatever it takes, get it done. So that's been cold in place recycled now. I don't know what their timeline is. It'll be a few weeks before they'll pave because that cold in place recycled's gotta dry down before they can pave it, but we're gonna get that fixed. It makes perfect sense to do it now, and it's probably a better fix than we would have done if we did on Kirkwood because we didn't have that milling machine in to do what they're doing. So anyway, that's being done. I think I had, Rachel, did you kind of maybe put this in your file, resolution, not resolutions, but just a document stating that. So now we're clear on that. So also, I think this morning, the contractor for our balsam project is in. They just got about 100 yards worth of cold in place started before I got here. So they're starting to mill up Balsam Avenue and getting that going. And so that's what's going on right now. And also, I still need to contact the city of Osage for those signs for this weekend. So
I gave you his contact information.
yeah, you did.
Correct?
Yep.
So that's the big thing, just so everybody knows what everybody else is doing.
Yep. I'll get in contact with him today and get that squared away with him. I don't think I have anything else for you. I did get a professional services agreement with WHKS for inspections on the asphalt paving. However, I was able to, when I was gone, I didn't know the DOT was allowing, I didn't get billed into the certification class for HMA inspection. Because when I was gone, they called Worth County. We had the meeting in Worth County, and I think they just called Worth County. So I might use Worth County's, well, he will newly be licensed or certified to do HMA inspections and certifications. I might just utilize him in Mitchell County as well. We'll just reimburse Worth County for his hours to come work on the paving. But I do have a contract also. If we fall behind or if we cannot keep up with the construction and the certification stuff, I've got a contract with the VHKS. I'll just kind of hold in my back pocket in case we need to pull it out and use it for the inspections on that project. But I think we might be okay. So.
Okay.
But that project is starting now, and then we'll have a pre-con. I think we're having pre-con on tomorrow on the 105 bridge. So I don't know, I don't have an update yet on when they want to start knocking things down, but we're getting closer.
Very good. Any questions for the engineer?
I got one question to check your memory. When we did Foothill,
Mhm.
and I asked if we could pave up to the stop sign in St. Ansgar,
Okay,
and we couldn't do that because,
well, there's two reasons. One, St. Ansgar's a population over 500, so they get their own road use tax money to take care of their sections of road in town. Second, I wasn't prepared to do all the required surveying and everything else to the sidewalk, ADA compliance stuff.
correct,
So we backed down to what our responsibilities were, and that was to the city limits. And we did taper off, but we tapered off before we got to any block that had a sidewalk in it to avoid having to get the city involved with paying for their sidewalk improvements and things like that. It just came out too late in the ball game, and it was easier to cut the project back and end at the city limits than to try to work with the city and try to get all their stuff done. So,
I guess where I'm going with this is, there's a former supervisor that's got on social media that the city asked to get that paid, and we told them no.
yeah, we had conversations with them, but we told them no. We had a reason why we told them no. It wasn't, and a lot of times, I mean, when we did 105 coming into town, we did come into town further than we probably needed to, but that was a board's decision to pave a little bit further into town, so. But my recollection is, and the reason we did what we did on Foothill was because when we start messing with the surfaces in town where we have radiuses to taper into on side streets, then by code, sidewalks need to be upgraded to ADA compliance. And that takes a lot more survey in town. And between when we submitted plans and trying to get that designed, there was no way we were gonna get it done in the timeline we needed. So it was easier for us to keep our own responsibilities and stay within the county right away and go from there, so.
I just was wondering, because he's hitting us, two of us pretty hard on social media, and social media is a great thing, except the truth is not in there, out there on this one.
Social media is not fun.
No.
No.
And I remember that discussion, and I actually think the mayor asked us if we would do that, and we had a lengthy discussion on it.
And I had a lengthy discussion with him too on side notes, and we came to terms with what we had going on. I didn't think it was that big of an issue after we got done with the plans. I mean, the city came back later and did their own thing with their own asphalt, so I mean, I guess I didn't think it was that big of an issue when we got done, so.
I didn't either, but apparently it's coming back to surface. I just wanted to bring it out to get the truth out there, not the false.
No, it was a design thing, and technically, we're not really responsible for all that paving in town without the city participating in something. I mean, because they have their own road use tax money that gets sent to them for that stretch of road.
Okay, thank you. Good. Any other questions for the engineer? Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Approved resolution for road closure on Osage 13th Street and County 350th Street. So as we all know, Valiant is having their celebration that was discussed at an earlier meeting. And the request was, in order to close a portion of the road, Rich wanted to have it done by resolution, so we were going to do that. Remind me the date, 24th is their celebration, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
I believe it's 11 to 3.
Can you have a resolution number?
The resolution is 1168-23. Sorry, I didn't have this completely filled out.
There wasn't anything in our packet for that.
Okay, so I'll read the resolution. So it's resolution number 1168-23. The Board of Supervisors of Mitchell County, Iowa, met in regular session on the 20th day of June 2023 at 8:30 a.m. The adoption of the following resolution was moved. Whereas the Osage Sustainability Celebration scheduled for the 24th day of June 2023 from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And whereas for purposes of public safety, traffic control, etc., it is necessary to close certain roadways for the relevant times surrounding the Osage Sustainability Celebration. And be it resolved by the Mitchell County Board of Supervisors that the county engineer be authorized to close 350th Street and 13th Street south of Heritage Drive, reference Osage, Heritage Drive is Osage, from the hours of 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it was on, if we approve it, the names and stuff. So if the board so chooses, I'll accept the motion to approve resolution 1168-23.
I'll make a motion.
Anderson makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Bartle seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call, Todd.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Sydney. Jim.
Aye. Motion carries. Discussion and possible action for previous funding request for We Saints Daycare. So a previous board approved to fund the daycare, but the agreement was at that time is that we needed to have a set of plans and a goal put in place. So when this request came through, I responded by asking for the set of plans. Well, they submitted that. Nice set of plans as far as what they're doing. They've met their obligation. So to my estimation, we now need to meet our obligation.
Yes, and people here talk about it.
Okay. You want to speak about it? You bet.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Megan Porish. I'm the board president at We Saints, and I also brought the daycare administrator, Rose Minnis, and fellow board member, Kelly Carlton, here today. Thank you for welcoming us on the agenda. A couple of weeks ago, We Saints Daycare had a groundbreaking ceremony for an expansion project expected to add licensed space for up to 55 more children. The project is expected to be completed in January of 2024 with Atura Architecture and the Joseph Company providing design build services. For those of you unfamiliar with our center, We Saints Daycare is a nonprofit community daycare located in St. Ansgar. We are celebrating our 30th year of operation and are currently licensed for 78 children. The groundbreaking is a result of a 5-year effort by daycare staff, board members, and community leaders. Being full in all age groups and fully staffed, the daycare board and community began researching what it would take to add on to the center. Most recently, St. Ansgar Economic Development led a fundraising effort for and received an Iowa Economic Development Authority Child Care Incentive Grant, which guaranteed project funding. Over $500,000 was raised from the local business community, all within 2 weeks. We sincerely appreciate your pledged support and are now asking for your approval to act on those funds as soon as possible. The funds will be put to immediate use for bills acquired in conjunction with this project. Thank you.
If the board approves it, the funds won't happen until after the fiscal year, after July 1st. It'll be coming out of that year's budget, so.
Okay. Yeah.
Any questions from the board?
Good project.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'll accept the motion to approve the funding request for We Saints Daycare at $100,000.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
Mayor makes a motion. Henderson seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call, Mark.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Sydney.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye. Discussion and possible action on carpenter sewer rates. Okay, we have approved previously ordinance 59.
Thank
Rachel,
you. Thank you.
Rachel, I was going to ask you some more and I forgot to. Was the ordinance published
Yep.
in the paper?
Yep.
So the ordinance is in effect?
Yep.
Okay. So that ordinance stated that it was going to be a not to exceed amount of $80. Can you pass this around, please? So what I'm passing around is something Rachel sent to us a while back. It has to do with, actually sent it to us dated the 14th. And it's the funding expenses for the Carpenter sewer. And on the last page, you'll see that total expenses for the year have been, I think I highlighted for everybody, or maybe not. Bottom right, $36,545.72. So that's what the expenses have been for the system, with the exception of 10 days left in this fiscal year. So this is just to give you an idea as far as what could possibly happen to set our rate. I used $37,000. I just rounded it up about $450 for the year of expenses. Then I subtracted out the previous operator's fee for a year. Then I added in the new operator's rate for a year. You can see my math on the left-hand side there, so that ends up coming to 49.6. So divided by 12 months to get it at a monthly rate, divided by 57 users, come to $72.51 per month per user. So at least that board can do whatever they want, but that's just a suggestion because that's what it actually cost to run this thing this last year with the new operator. Comments or questions?
So we set the rate today, then it has to go, the ordinance has to be updated, or no, or we can just, because the ordinance was updated, we can just.
The ordinance is a maximum, so we don't, so anytime we set rates now, it's just gonna be by a resolution, as long as it stays under that $80.
So next year, there's an operator that's cheaper, we can drop it, right, correct?
So it would be my suggestion next year after the fiscal year, let's just say July 10th or whatever, we have a completely full year of one of these in front of us. We do the same thing, see what it costs for a year to run it, set the rate based on that, at least we have an idea that way.
Yep. Well, looks like that's what it's gonna take, so, for now. Probably round it up or down to the nearest dollar or something, maybe.
Whatever you guys want to
Easier,
do.
I guess.
Any other thoughts?
Easier for math purposes to go with it.
273?
Yeah, it's over 50.
Because we're 10 days short, but I mean, there's not gonna be a lot of expenses, but
No, I suppose I'd have to go 73, so I should do that and revisit it every year.
I have a resolution that, I'll read, but I wanted to discuss this a little bit first before I read the resolution. Any thoughts from people?
Well, we can change the rates at any time, and if they get a different operator, we can lower it.
Yep, you can change rates anytime you want.
Yeah, we just, us five can just read.
By resolution.
By resolution.
Yep.
I mean, it looks like what it has to be for now, so.
Is that a motion?
I'll read the resolution and we can do it by resolution. But just wanted to talk about it first, so.
Okay.
Everybody's up in arms about it. I wasn't gonna even bother with the resolution, but.
No. This one is.
Okay, resolution 1169-23. Board of Supervisors of Mitchell County, Iowa met in regular session on the 20th day of June, 2023 at 8:30 a.m. The adoption of the following resolution was moved and seconded. Whereas the Mitchell County Board of Supervisors desires to set the service charge for operation and maintenance in connection with the Carpenter Sanitary Sewer System for Carpenter County of Mitchell, State of Iowa, pursuant to Mitchell County Ordinance Number 59. And whereas it is in the best interest of Mitchell County, Iowa, it is now necessary to act. Whereas now therefore be it resolved that the service charge pursuant to Mitchell County Ordinance number 59 be set at $73. So if the board wants to go that route, I'll accept a motion to approve resolution 1169-23.
I'll move to make that motion.
Brian makes a motion. Is there a second? I'll second it. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call, Todd,
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Cindy. Mike.
Aye.
Mark.
Motion carries. Discussion and possible action on Heartland Insurance renewal. I don't have any information about it. Does Rachel or Mark, your rep for it, does someone else speak to it, or?
Yeah, when was that? They sent their proposal out. We put it on hold till we got some more information. That is gonna be the rate there that they sent. Was she gonna send an invoice today?
I think that's the plan.
We put it on hold because they may change the rates on the special acceptance, which won't make any difference on our end of it. That comes out of the surplus that's in the pool. So whatever that they proposed last, like February when they came, March,
Yeah, I think Orange came.
that is what the rates are gonna be.
Okay, so we'll just have this on another agenda item coming up, you mean?
We can, or just make a motion to accept the prices that they
Well,
proposed.
I'll want to know what that dollar amount is before
Okay, we can put it on, it'll be on next week's agenda.
Next week.
Okay, Rachel, you want to put that on next
Next
week's
week lower
agenda?
because of the surplus in the pool.
No, that won't lower, it's gonna be that rate. The only thing we can do is up our, how much coverage we would like. We upped it, 2 years ago, we upped it another $1 million.
Yeah, so on the liability part, right?
Is there 5 now? Five?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just telling Mark before the meeting that I had a meeting last night with FMC Early Childhood, and that's one of the
Special exceptions.
special exceptions, and we approved that last night.
Excellent.
Yeah, we can put it on next week and we'll have the solid numbers.
Yeah, I'd rather have, personally, I'd rather have solid numbers of what I'm approving, so. Real good. Okay, so that'll be for next week. Okay. Approved contract for library service for Mitchell County. Anybody from library here, or no? So I'll just read them. I'm not gonna read this whole contract. I'll just read the highlighted parts that I did. So it's a contract entered, if we approve it, entered into this day, the 20th of June, between Mitchell County Supervisors and the Board of Trustees of the public libraries. Those cities are Osage, St. Ansgar, Stacyville, and Riceville. During our budget sessions, we approved $165,120 for the fiscal year of 23-24. And they're divided based on a formula. 5,000 earmarked for technology, 25% divided among libraries, 55% based on dollars spent on library materials, 20% to be divided according to the hours that the libraries are open to the public. And the agreement is a 1-year agreement. This contract begins July 1st, 23 and ends June 30th of 24. So this is basically just a contract approving of what we said we were going to fund them at. And it's the same dollar amount that we agreed on earlier, so. Any questions from the board about this? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the contract for library service for Mitchell County.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for library service for Mitchell County.
Mayor makes a motion. Is there a second?
Okay.
Arto seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call, Mike,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Sydney.
Motion carries. Discussion with Summit Carbon Solutions. Someone from Summit here?
I'm Rick Schmark, President.
Sir, okay.
I'll start.
Certainly.
Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you. This is a very important item for the local regional economy. And Verdos, where Absolute's located up there in St. Ansgar, Iowa. If you drew a 50-mile circle around Absolute Energy, 90% of our owners live within that 50-mile circle. So it has a major impact on the local economy. We process about between 43 and 44 million bushels per year. So that's equivalent of all the corn grown in Mitchell County and about a third of that grown in Howard County. And 60% of the corn that's grown in the state of Iowa is delivered to an ethanol plant. So major impact on the rural economy and rural agriculture, but also, trying to keep our focus on the local economy. We've looked at these options around CO2 for close to a decade. And looking at the various pipeline options strongly for the past 2 years, our board has been. We chose Summit because of their expertise and how far along they are in their process. Okay, the right-of-way access ROWs, they have 82% completed in Floyd County, 92% in Chickasaw, and 84% in Saragordo County, and that's where the main line would run. So this would be a small lateral that would run from St. Ansgar, down to the main line in that Rod Rockford area, where it would be connected there. Because of their how many right-of-way accesses they already have done, the 45Z payment contained within the Inflation Reduction Act begins on January 1st of 2025. Okay, and getting that done as quickly to that timeline as to when payments would be eligible from the government around that is one of the main reasons that we've chosen Summit, along with the people that they have involved with the project. High quality folks. So I just wanted to introduce you to the project. This would take our CO2 that we're currently emitting to atmosphere, capture it, okay, and then compress it, send it to North Dakota, where the geological formation is proper to be placed underground and permanently stored. You're removing that CO2 from the atmosphere. And Waylon Brown, I think, did a nice job. If you've had a chance to see his editorial, but I'll just read a couple of sentences, same as our feelings. These investments will capture carbon dioxide from ethanol plants before it's emitted into the atmosphere, creating more than a 30-point reduction in the carbon intensity score of ethanol production. Today, landowners are signed to use agreements for 82% in Saragordo, 84% in Floyd, and 92% in Chickasaw. The overwhelming number of people actually on the route are supporting these investments and want to see them move forward. For my part, I believe these investments in our infrastructure represent the single most important step we can take to strengthen agriculture and ethanol in the state of Iowa and beyond. Now, there are currently 48 pipelines, natural gas pipelines, operating in the state of Iowa, and that's 47,000 miles. That's equivalent to over 7 trips back and forth to Alaska that are operating. And you were just talking about insurance, and just before I got here, I was talking with Nathan Vandergrind, who's the president of Protect, who does a lot of the insurance work. And their estimate of the risk of the CO2 pipeline versus a natural gas pipeline is in the range of 8 to 10 times less risk, associated with that, because it's not flammable. And so any questions for me before Kylie will do a better job getting into the weeds of this, but it's a big deal for Absolute Energy, and it's a big deal for our members and the corn growers in the area. And if for some reason we weren't part of that pipeline, or a pipeline to sequester, and other neighboring states and areas plants do, that would put us at a significant competitive disadvantage to the marketplace.
Is there a lot you have to do to your plant in order to start capturing it? Is there a lot of upgrades or changes?
Not really. Okay, you from the CO2 stack, okay, it goes through a scrubber, cleans up any impurities, and then it's just compressed, okay? Once it's compressed, then it goes into the line, it just moves on down to where it's compressed at the end for permanent storage. But we also have offtake agreements because down the road, if further developments come up for uses for that CO2, there are offtakes to put it to its best use, down the road. We're also looking at other things at Absolute Energy. We just had a meeting yesterday, it's a hard meeting, been looking at combined heat and power for quite some time, which would also lower our CI score. As you know, Absolute's one of the most efficient plants in the industry, and we're very proud of that. And it's our people that make that happen. A lot of you know the folks that work there. And so the credit goes to folks like Tyler. I asked Tyler to come along. He's our environmental health and safety engineer. And if you have any questions pertaining to that, he can answer. But it's an exciting project and development for the area. Thank you. Yes.
I have a question. How big a pipeline are you talking?
It's 68 inches, 8 inches.
And how deep is it? They vary that.
6 feet approximately.
Is it hot then when it's going through? Or is it
No, it's very cold.
very cold?
It's ambient temperature.
Well, yeah, once it's in the line.
Kylie, didn't you say it was a 6-inch line? Some of us sat down with some of it because they wanted to talk with us.
Yeah, so it's designed as a 6-inch line now. We have the ability to go up to 8. That's what the agreements with the landowners will say. Just because as we change the route slightly, hydraulics could change, but as it stands today, it's designed as a 6-inch line.
What's in it for the landowners? Is it?
Okay, I can.
Yeah.
Come on up. Thank you. Thank you.
You bet.
Yep.
I've had a landowner's estimate.
So I'm Kylie Lang. I briefly introduced myself a couple weeks ago. I've met with a couple of you guys. I'm the project manager for the state of Iowa for the pipeline system. Wanted to give you a little bit more detail. I'll probably walk through this relatively fast and then talk after. But walking through this, the first page, I think Rick talked on the why quite a bit. And it's a lot better coming from him, more in the hometown. These are the plants that are on our pipeline system today. So there's 32 different ethanol plants, quite a few different companies that we're working with. And the why is lowering their carbon intensity score, like he mentioned. To compete in a changing global market, dropping your carbon emissions is a requirement. And this is a step, a big step for them in dropping their carbon intensity score almost in half in most plant cases. So how we get the CO2. So for every 3 pounds of corn that goes to an ethanol plant, a pound goes to ethanol, a pound goes to DDG, and a pound goes into the air as CO2. So they're able to, profit off the ethanol. They've found a way to profit off the DDGs, but the ethanol is just being emitted into the atmosphere today. Having the ability to catch it, it comes out nearly pure CO2. So when he talks about taking away the impurities, it's almost purely just dehydrating the water out of the CO2. So it's actually very simple, which is why the ethanol industry has been able to do this first. A lot of other industries are looking to do similar things, but their CO2 isn't pure the way the ethanol industry CO2 is pure. So it's a huge advantage for the ethanol industry to be able to take this step first. So it's briefly hit on at the ethanol plant, we will capture the CO2 as it's being emitted or before it's emitted. We'll dehydrate it, compress it, put it in the pipeline. It'll be transported. In this case, down from Mitchell County to our main line. It will connect in Floyd County. Then it will be transported through Iowa, through South Dakota, up to North Dakota. The reason you choose North Dakota is because of their geological formations that they have. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Bakken and the enhanced oil recovery that took place up in North Dakota. So they had oil sitting in the reservoirs underground that they were able to extract the oil. Well, they also had identical reservoirs or nearly identical reservoirs that were sitting empty. So we are utilizing that empty area. So it's just southeast of the Bakken. And we have 3 different storage locations all in the same area. They range between 1 mile to 2 miles deep underground. It will be taken down, pressurized. It will sit permanently in those structures. Think sponge with cap rock on all sides. So it will fill the gaps of the sponge, and as time goes, it will calcify and solidify underground. So the CO2 will become solid underground through time.
How much storage do you estimate you have underground there in years worth?
I don't know the numbers. I definitely used to know the numbers. But we're believing in 100 years at our current capacity, we'll use 1% of the available storage in North Dakota.
So you got a lot.
So it's, we will not fill it up. Tens of more projects will not fill the capacity up.
Okay.
So map here, this is showing you phase 1 of the project, which we've been working on now for 2 years. I believe we've been working with the Iowa Utilities Board for 1.5 years on what's now phase 1 of the project, which does not include the lateral up to Absolute Energy. We actually last week got our hearing dates for this project. So the hearings will start on August 22nd and go as long as they take. Our goal is to have a permit by the end of the year to start construction late spring next year. And again, that is phase 1, and I want to make that important to you guys. We are not throwing this at you guys, in the third quarter. We will have a fully different hearing for this lateral. So it will take place after the hearings of the first project, or what we're now calling phase 1. So if you go to the next page, there's another just different view of phase 1, and that's going to show you the pipe sizes. But there's phase 1 is blue on this map. Should have page numbered this. And then the black lateral is what we're calling the absolute lateral. That will have its own hearing process. It'll be on its own timeline. Although, as Rick mentioned, we are going to try and get them in service as fast as we can to allow them to use that 45Z tax credit. But again, totally different hearing with the IUB. We actually submitted to the Iowa Utilities Board, which I'm referencing as IUB, yesterday for this lateral. So only as of 3:30 yesterday were we allowed to share these images with anyone. So from there, for your guys' reference points, and if you go to the next page, just for your reference, it's a zoomed in version. From here, we submitted to the Iowa Utilities Board. We said, this is where we want to put our pipeline. And 3 tracks each direction. We want the ability to move our pipeline. This is different than how it went the first time, where we were only able to move our pipeline 1 track each direction. With it being a smaller project, you can have a bigger corridor because it's easier, to get your hand on. So we submitted to the IUB. The next step is we will send certified and non-certified mail to every person in the corridor. So at this point, it'll just be, hey, there's a pipeline coming. There's going to be a meeting held by the IUB in Mitchell County. If you're interested, please attend. Notice. We will host that meeting. I unfortunately don't even know how to give you a timeline because it falls under the IUB's decisions. When that meeting takes place, we're assuming 45 to 60 days because we have to notify all the farmers and as many tenants as we can get a hold of. So that meeting will take place. Before that meeting, we can't speak to any landowners. We can't talk negotiations with any landowners. So following that meeting, that allows us to make first contact with the landowners, where we'll have land agents go out, introduce the project to them, and that's when we ask for survey permission to go out, survey the route, see what we have, see if there's wetlands, see if there's restricted areas, huge terrace that's terrible to build on, things like that, to actually be able to lock down the hydraulics of the system. So we do a civil survey, a biological survey where we'll get the environmental impacts, and then we do a cultural survey that is done by indigenous people to verify we're not disrupting their historical habitats. So that will all be completed. So we go out and ask, at the same time that we start asking for survey, we start talking about land negotiations, which Mike, you asked what's in it for the landowner. They have the right to sit down and negotiate a dollar value for us to lay the pipeline. So we take comps in the area and we'll start at what we consider land value. And that's purchase land value for the amount of acres we disrupt. When we're only actually acquiring an easement for the underground, they'll have full rights to use the property once we've come through in construction, with the exception of they can't build a house over top of it, can't plant trees over top of it, because we got to be able to have a visual and access. That is just a 50-foot easement that they can't build on. We'll need 100-foot for construction, so we'll stay in that 100-foot corridor. But we'll negotiate a dollar amount. And the negotiations, everyone seems to care about different things. We've learned with the first project, some people want a lot of money and could care less where it's put. Some people want to put a little bit deeper. Some people wanted to skirt their property. So it's all about the negotiations, and we have that individually with each landowner.
So that's like a one-time payment?
It's a one-time payment, 100% upfront, as well as 3 years crop damage. Also 100% upfront.
And then you had mentioned that they have an option, the landowner may have an option of whether you dig it in or like tile it in. Did you disrupting the dirt and stuff?
There are, yeah, that has happened in negotiations. Most of the time we determine what we call a horizontal directional drill. We'll do that underneath wetlands we can't disturb. We'll do that underneath the roads. Depends on, in some situations with your guys' public tile, once we get into those conversations and how we handle it. The majority of it will be trenched in using a trencher. I know when people think pipeline, they see this big ditch and this huge hole, 6-inch pipeline. It's going to be an 18-inch ditch. We are going to separate subsoil from topsoil. We'll come through before construction and test every property's topsoil depths. And that is submitted to what's called an agricultural inspector that you guys get to hire, paid for by us. So they work through you. They have full stop work authority for not following the topsoil depths. If we're working when it's too wet, if we're not following what's called the agricultural impact mitigation plan for how to handle private drain tile, they have full rights to stop work. And again, they're managed through you, but paid for by us. And that's a rule of the Iowa Utilities Board.
I don't want to get into something you're going to talk about. We're going to talk about tiles, so I don't know if that's part of this.
We can hit on it now.
Okay, you talked about warranting tile repairs and Ellingson doing it, and possibly subcontracting it if they want their own tilers. Do you want to talk about that, please?
Absolutely. So we know there's a ton of tile, private tile. How we handle it is in every easement that's signed, we warranty all tile in perpetuity. So any tile damage done by the construction or maintenance of the pipeline is warranted in perpetuity. That means if we put the pipeline in and we have 7 dry years in a row, and on the 8th year we have wet years, and we realize that there's damage, it is still under warranty for us to come back out and repair those tiles. Usual pipeline procedure is the mainline construction company, which in this case is going to be Precision Pipeline, a union contractor, does all the repair. They put in a temporary and then they put in a permanent repair during construction. We learned during Dakota Access, by learning from Dakota Access, that didn't go very well. That no one was prepared for the amount of tile that Iowa has. So we brought in Ellingson, which is a Minnesota tiling company, and they're managing all of our drain tile. They're doing every temporary repair, every permanent repair, with the exception of within that easement, a landowner has the right to say, no, I want Jim's tiling company to do my tile work. As long as that Jim's tiling company is willing to fall under the Ellingson umbrella as a subcontractor, we continue that warranty, because Ellingson will do the last sign off on it. If they don't want to, it's their brother-in-law and they can't fall under as a subcontractor, then we directly pay the landowner for the labor, and the warranty is voided. But they have all of those options are available for every person as we start the conversation with negotiations. And we weren't doing that, a year and a half ago when we kicked off. We learned that was something important to Iowa landowners, and we switched to it. So talking more generally about CO2 pipelines, there's about 5,000 miles of CO2 pipeline in the ground today. They've been regulated by the federal government, I believe since 1991. They've been in the ground quite a bit longer than that. So there is a history of understanding how CO2 pipelines work. So CO2 in the air is a gas. When we compress it, it goes into what is referenced as dense phase, but it will move in the pipeline in the same way a liquid will move. So it's regulated like a liquid pipeline. So it's regulated at the same way a gasoline pipeline is regulated. It has to follow the same stringent safety standards by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Association that all liquid pipelines have to follow. So the major regulators is the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Association, which is PHMSA, which is at the federal level, the Army Corps, which is at the federal level, the Department of Natural Resources, again, the federal level, then the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, which is the state, and then there's the Iowa Utilities Board. So it's a lot of different regulators. Easiest way to remember it is PHMSA regulates safety, the DNR regulates environmental impact, and the state regulates the siting and location of the pipeline. So the state picks the location, and then the federal PHMSA says, since they picked these locations, these are the stringent safety standards you have to follow based on the location of the pipeline.
Does it get brought up much anywhere about the mishap that happened down in Mississippi?
From time to time. I'll just dig right into it. In Satartia, Mississippi, there was a CO2 release. PHMSA came in, they did a full report, about 300 pages of what happened, what went wrong. The first and most important thing that went wrong is the operator of that pipeline made 10 mistakes. No one in the county, not the emergency manager, not the first responders, knew that there was a CO2 pipeline in their county. First problem. They knew the release took place. So following a 100-year storm, their pipeline was washed out at a river, and it had exposed pipe, it had been exposed for over a day. No one went out and checked on it, and there was a guillotine rupture at a weld. So it's emitting CO2. No one knows that it's even a chance that there's CO2 because no one knows there's a CO2 pipeline there. The operator doesn't contact the emergency response company or a team for over an hour. They don't contact PHMSA for multiple hours. And then we go into the emergency response. They didn't have a CO2 monitor. They didn't have an O2 monitor. They didn't have H2S monitors. They had no ability to understand what they were walking into, which is 100% the fault of the pipeline operating company, because it falls into PHMSA regulations to train and equip emergency responders. So it wasn't that the regulation failed, it was that the operator failed. So that's what happened to start. Now CO2 was being released. It was naturally occurring CO2 that was in the pipeline. Naturally occurring CO2 has H2S in it. If you guys are familiar at all with H2S, it becomes dangerous at 10 parts per million and deadly at 100 parts per million. When we're talking CO2, it becomes dangerous in the 15 to 20,000 parts per million range, and hazardous to life in the tens of thousands into the 100,000 parts per million range. So H2S and CO2 can't be compared, and because there was no monitor there, they have no idea if it was H2S or CO2 that was in high enough concentrations. But even with that, with everything that went wrong, with them not shutting the pipeline down, with the emergency responders not being equipped with what to do, there were 0 fatalities and there were 0 injuries. 45 people went to the hospital, 0 people were admitted into the hospital for CO2 or anything else. There's absolutely a story out there, it was written by the Huffington Post, that makes this sound very apocalyptic. Everything went wrong. Everything that could have went wrong. But the reports say we smelled rotten eggs, we saw a green plume. Well, H2S, that's H2S, that's not CO2. CO2 is odorless. It's colorless, you wouldn't see green. So we're learning from what they did. Even with how much went wrong, PHMSA came out with a report and said, these are all the things that we need to fix on our pipelines because of what happened in Satartia, Mississippi. So we went to every single one of our water body crossings and we did a lateral migration study and a scour analysis, which tells us, we looked at the last 50 to 100 years and said, how has this pipeline moved? How has this river moved? So how can we imagine it's going to move in the next 50 years so that we don't have the ability to have a washout? And then we went and looked at the competency of the soils at our river crossings and how likely is it that there's going to be some type of slide in the soils. So this is testing that no pipeline has ever done, but every pipeline in the future will do following Satartia. So that's what's important to know. As you build new pipelines, they're safer. Following Satartia in the same update to the regulation, we have mainline block valves, which can block in systems. So when something does go wrong, we can shut valves and it blocks the system in. Before, there was no set regulation on how far apart valves can be. It was at the discretion of the operating company. And now they cannot exceed 20 miles and they come in closer. They have to be on each side of a river and they have to be on each side of a high populated area. So these are all new regulations that came following Satartia. They are continuing to review the CO2 regulations as they do after all major incidents. They're also currently reviewing natural gas regulations. So there is a concern, like they're updating your CO2 regulations. Why don't you just wait until the regulation update has completed? They started the natural gas regulation update in 2011. It's being enacted starting this year into next year. So 12 years later, they completed it. They do full studies. They come out with a lot of reports. The natural gas industry has learned a lot in those 12 years, but it didn't stop progress in natural gas, and it shouldn't stop progress in CO2. And PHMSA holds that same stance. They didn't think their regulations were strong enough. They would put a federal moratorium on it. So that's our stance. They have a lot to do. They have a lot more regulation increase for gaseous CO2 pipelines, but since we fall into supercritical CO2 pipelines, we're already regulated by liquid. Where the gaseous, they actually are not regulated at the federal level. So that's gonna be a major change in the CO2 world, but not for our pipeline. That was probably very confusing, if you guys have any questions.
According to what Kylie just said there, the new pipelines are safer than the old. Okay, one of the things that's great about biofuels is as we grow the market by biofuels, we're displacing petroleum products. So as we build more CO2 pipelines, creating more markets for biofuels components, more will be produced and will displace some of the older pipelines in the ground with the newer ones, supply-demand fundamentals. And you can see the economic impact that biofuels have on corn and all products. Take a look at any developing country's GDP. You can just Google Ethiopia's GDP. In 83, it was $8 billion. 93, it was $8 billion. 2003, it was $8 billion. In 2023, it's over $100 billion. Okay, that growth in that developing country, back in these, we've got a lot of gray hair in the room. We all remember LDP, set aside acres, all of that. The United States had the money to subsidize. Developing countries didn't. So as we grow demand for these products, it raises the economics, not just in Iowa, but in all these developing countries. And where in the United States, agriculture is 4 to 5% of our gross domestic product. In developing countries, it's 60%. So, and you take a look at the World Health data, see the improvement that this has had in these developing countries at the same time. So while obviously we see it right here in the Midwest, but it's a worldwide effect, the economics here. And as we improve these economics around biofuels, we're going to have more and more of it, which displaces more and more petroleum products, down the road. I know you know 99% of this, but it's important components for world health.
Yeah, so actually, June 7th, a new study came out that we've been waiting for on impact of pure CO2 indoors. So the shelter in place option in a worst case scenario situation. And what it came back with is in high concentrations, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 parts per million in the air surrounding a home, you are perfectly safe to remain sheltered indoors as the CO2 won't enter. And they did this study in a closed environment where in the actual atmosphere, CO2 disperses at a relatively fast rate. And they even spike tested into much higher concentrations, although they couldn't get the tent to hold. So that study didn't last as long. But it also was the ability to be in the CO2 cloud rather than indoors. And they had healthy test studies able to, after 60 minutes and 90,000 parts per million, show no sign, no health side effects. So that's the important research that PHMSA is doing right now and sending out. Their main goal is understanding water body crossings, understanding how to better equip our emergency response teams, and then understanding fracture propagation, which is a bit more of a technical side of CO2. But we're paying attention to the studies and what PHMSA is doing and working on, and we're making sure our pipeline is ready and equipped with the best possible knowledge going in. So before we ever go into operations, we'll come to each county and build an emergency response plan with the emergency manager and their team. So we'll have a specific Mitchell County emergency response. But important to note, all of these years, all of these miles of pipeline, there's only one incident that we can talk about. And although it was horrible and enough went wrong that we learned a lot, there's one incident, and that's important to note. This isn't happening every day. There's millions of miles of pipeline in the ground, and it's pretty rare to hear of any type of pipeline release. So this is a little bit more on the why. There was a study that came out by the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association. And they mentioned that about if Iowa chooses to not participate in carbon capture and underground sequestration, that they believe 75% of the ethanol industry will leave Iowa in the next 10 years. You know, it was mentioned nearly 60% of corn in Iowa goes to ethanol plants to be turned into ethanol, and the dependence on that. And we often hear, 20 years ago, we survived without ethanol. We could survive without it again. Just the massive amount of drain tile that's been put in the last 20 years that's increased the yields so dramatically has allowed for the increase in the use, but there's no going backwards from it. We can't say, hey, farmers, please produce 60% less. We no longer need this. And that's ethanol having a seat at the table in the renewable fuels conversation, having a seat next to the electric vehicles and say, my emissions are matching yours, is allowing industries like aviation to look at pure 100% ethanol as a viable option for planes. We have a company, Gevo, who's building their plant in South Dakota to use 100% ethanol for fuel, but they're only building that second plant if this pipeline is built. So they say, if, ethanol can't reduce their carbon intensity, there's no value in me using ethanol for planes because it's not reducing my carbon impact. So actual construction, and again, these are numbers for the phase 1 project, but it's going to be about a $4.5 billion project. It's going to be about $1 billion in Iowa alone. We are going to believe we'll have 11,000 contractors during construction. I think it's actually going to be more like 15,000 to 16,000 construction workers when we really dig down into it. 100% of the labor in Iowa, the construction labor in Iowa will be union. So we're gonna go union in Iowa and Minnesota. Once we're in service, we'll have about 1,100 operators. The operators will be based all along the pipeline at the ethanol plants. And they are gonna be ingrained in the communities. They're the ones who respond to one calls. They'll be around to do continual education for emergency responders, which is required annually, as well as there, in any case, to handle if for any reason something went wrong. In terms of taxes, the average property tax for each county is just shy of $1 million once we're in operations. I did a quick calculation on Mitchell, and again, not an accountant, so all I could do was look at other counties that you guys are similar to. And I was looking at about $1.2 million annually in taxes that will pay to Mitchell County. 1.2. And people often are like, well, that will drastically drop each year. And that is true. It will decrease as the value of our pipeline decreases. But if you look at Dakota Access, they're still paying pretty close to what they initially estimated. So it's not dropping. It's not gonna be 2 years and gone, and it'll never hit zero. But this is on top of, we don't take away property taxes from the landowners. We don't own the property. We're just paying for the space underground.
So the landlord still pay property tax on the top of the ground, you pay for under the ground?
Yep.
And that's your.
Yeah, that's for our easements. So this is just a couple more of the examples of the tax amounts left with you guys. And I left you guys our right-of-way progress numbers just so that you can have them. Again, you guys are obviously at 0, and it's a fully different project. But we're working with landowners. I hope that the numbers show you that. We started this project, it was a 2,000-mile system. We were a startup company. We have a parent company, Summit Agriculture. They brought in pipeline experts to work as their subsidiary to build this pipeline. And we came out fast. And we're not afraid to say that we made a couple mistakes. We had a lot of new people. They weren't all familiar with CO2. They weren't all familiar with the agricultural needs of the Midwest. But this time, this is a new project. This new lateral, we've learned a lot. We've fixed our processes a lot. And I think we're gonna have a lot more success on top of the success we've already had. We kind of had to dig ourselves out of the hole a little bit at the beginning, which, are bumps I imagine every company has. But we got to go through that before we ever entered Mitchell County. And I think that's gonna show pretty drastically in how much we've learned on the best practices and reaching out to landowners and making sure they have a full understanding. And we kind of now understand what the Iowa farmer cares the most about in those conversations. And again, those conversations will not start until after we have the meeting with the IUB in Mitchell County, which we'll make sure you guys are all aware of.
That will be a public hearing, public meeting?
A public meeting. I believe it's just considered a meeting.
Okay, not
It's
public, but public.
hosted and ran by the IUB. We'll have a panel of Summit Carbon Solutions management there. Everyone is allowed to speak and ask questions. They can ask questions of the Iowa Utilities Board, or they can ask questions of Summit Carbon.
And that's not necessarily in this room. They'll choose a space.
It's gonna be
that's-
it has to be a venue big enough for every person we mail to
Okay.
attend.
Okay.
I have to imagine there'll be plenty of people from our phase 1 project at that meeting as well. So I would guess it's gonna be fairly well attended.
Okay.
But it's a little confusing because at that point, no one will know if they're on the pipeline or just in the corridor. So we'll then following that meeting, we'll reach out just to the people on the pipeline. And we're gonna try and make that more clear than we made it the first time. We're not reaching out to people because we're neglecting them. They're probably not on the pipeline.
You said that the IUB is the one that designates the route, and the map you showed us earlier, that is the official route?
It's gonna be pretty clear. There might be a small changes, but with this zoomed out, this is
Okay.
gonna be the route. And then that darker red, that is the area of who gets the mailing.
Okay.
And the pipeline can't move out of that dark red. And that dark red is much bigger than the zone we were working in the phase 1 project. And that's gonna be wonderful for everyone involved.
Doesn't corn and plants need CO2 to live?
Absolutely. And we're not taking CO2 out of the air. We're taking it before it ever enters into the air. So we're not reducing the amounts in the air. And just looking back from 2000, where I think they really started collecting good data, to now, it's increasing every year. I'm never gonna take a stance on people's opinion on global warming, but the facts is that it's increasing, and you can look at that by the data, if it negatively or affects the environment or not, on your opinion. The amount we're taking out will just prevent some of the increase. It's not gonna decrease the total amount. What we're taking across the project footprint is like equivalent to like driving 3.6 million cars, or taking 3.6 million cars off the road, or it's about every car in the state of Iowa equivalents. But in terms of, it's not gonna reduce the amount of CO2 in the air, it's just gonna prevent an increase with, every time manufacturing increases their process, they're usually increasing their CO2 emissions. Where we need to sustain, some believe we need to reduce, not gonna get into opinions, but we're not going to, it's just gonna prevent increase.
Any questions from the board for Kylie?
You explained it well.
Yeah, we try to come back quarterly. Kaylee Langerl, who's actually sitting in the back, she does the quarterly updates. I come when there's, big news. I have a lot of counties, so Kaylee will be around a little bit more. But we're always available. My phone is always on. I gave you guys my number last time I was here. And as we learn stuff, we try to get in front of you guys so you hear about it first from us. And the more you want to be involved, the more will come, the less you care, we won't bug you. So whatever you guys want, it's usually how much you guys hear from the landowners.
I know there was a hand up, so what I decided as far as to run the meeting, this meeting was, these meetings could be volatile for what I've heard. And so what was decided was that we're not gonna take, a discussion thing from the public for Summit Solutions. If there's questions from the public that you have for Summit, you can find them after the meeting, talk with her, ask the question. We will have public comments at the end of the meeting, but it's not public discussion, it's public comments. So that's how we're gonna run it today. So,
All right.
thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Items of note, meetings attended. I had a Osage City Council meeting last night. They will be coming to our board meeting. There's, Mitchell County owns a pretreatment facility for wastewater out there. You get rent for that. And I'm not gonna get into as far as, they just need to have an extension on the agreement for the, they're gonna come talk to us about it. It's nothing bad that's going on, we're just gonna save it for them. So it'll be on the agenda. Brock will come here, talk about it, and then that was the big thing that was on the meeting last night, and I just questioned as far as what was going on with that. So that's pretty much it for that. All I had.
I had landfill meeting, a very short executive board meeting. Had very good tonnage last month. Their haul truck was supposed to be in. Unfortunately, the people that were putting it together forgot a part, and so that back ordered them a couple months, so they're waiting still to get their haul truck. Otherwise, everything else looks pretty good. They're having their anniversary date in September. That's about it.
I had a conservation board meeting, but Mike Meyer was here, went over that, so.
County Social Service meeting, we had to update the job description because we're hiring a new service coordinator, and they had to line it with the other ones. And then the Heartland Insurance meeting, there's gonna do a harassment training coming up this fall. And with this special acceptance policies that they talked about, and then cyber coverage, they're still hitting that pretty hard, that all counties need to get their cyber security in place.
I had a FMC early childhood meeting. We got a preschools gave us reports, went over our financial report, ending of May 31st. We had to just make some amendments on a few contracts that we were gonna have some money left over, some you can't carry over, so we moved all that around. And we've reviewed and approved preschool scholarships, which there was people there that really thanked the FMC Early Childhood for all the scholarships for these preschool kids. There's parents that would not be able to enroll their kids in there, so that's a big thing. So, and then we reviewed the proposed fiscal year 24 budgets, which will start July 1st. Their year runs the same as us, July 1st to June 31st, or June 30th. And that was it.
Okay. Your management plan.
One for Shadow Finisher Farm, 4550 down in Brixton.
Okay. Any public comments to start with, not related to Summit Carbon? Anything? Okay. Any public comments about anything? Okay. Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.
Okay.